My wife said at a party that if her ex had chosen her instead of his addictions, they would still be together. But now I also choose something better than her, and it's divorce because she has become violent. I am 38 years old and have been married to my wife Grace, who is 37, for 14 years. We've known each other since we were teenagers, we practically grew up together. We have two wonderful children, Madison, 13, and Mason, 11, who are the light of our lives. I always thought we had a solid marriage, built on trust and mutual love. But something happened this weekend that has made me question everything. Last Friday, Grace and I were invited to a high school reunion. It was an adults-only event, so we left the kids with my parents. The atmosphere was festive, with everyone reminiscing about old times and catching up on each other's lives. As you'd expect at these kinds of gatherings, alcohol was flowing freely. Grace and I don't usually drink much, but that night we decided to let loose a little. I limited myself to a couple of beers, but I noticed Grace was drinking more than usual. I didn't think much of it at the time, I just thought she was enjoying a carefree night, especially since we didn't have to worry about our kids that night as they were staying over at their grandparents' house. As the night went on, the atmosphere became more relaxed, and the conversations more personal. At one point, a group of friends started talking about Logan, Grace's ex-boyfriend. Logan and Grace had been together during high school and part of college before she and I started dating. I overheard bits of the conversation. Apparently, Logan had spiraled into addiction to drugs and alcohol. Some of our friends expressed concern and lamented what had happened to him. I remembered that this had been the reason Grace ended things with him so many years ago. Grace and I started dating about a year after her breakup with Logan. Of course, I always knew he existed, but it was never a frequent topic of conversation between us. Grace had told me that the relationship ended because of Logan's issues with drugs, but we never delved deeply into the subject. I respected her past and trusted that if there was something important to say, she would tell me. That's when it happened. Grace, visibly affected by the alcohol, joined the conversation about Logan. Her voice was louder than usual, and I could detect a tone in her voice that I had never heard before. With a mix of nostalgia and bitterness, she said something that froze my blood. You know, I gave Logan a choice. I told him to choose between drugs or me. He chose drugs. If he had chosen to stay with me, we would probably still be together. The silence that followed that statement was deafening. I could feel everyone's eyes alternating between Grace and me. My mind went blank for a moment, trying to process what I had just heard. Did my wife, the woman I've shared the last 16 years of my life with, just imply that I was her second choice? I wanted to say something, to confront her right then and there, but I held back. We had all been drinking, and that wasn't the time or place to have a discussion that could change our lives. Besides, part of me hoped that it was just the alcohol talking, that the next day Grace would realize how inappropriate her comment was and apologize. The rest of the night passed in a haze. I tried to keep my composure, to keep socializing as if nothing had happened, but Grace's words echoed in my head over and over again. When we finally got home, Grace collapsed into bed while I stayed up for hours, going over every moment of our relationship, looking for signs I might have missed. The next morning, during breakfast, Grace noticed that I was unusually quiet. The kids were still at my parents' house, so we were alone. She asked me what was wrong, and I decided it was time to address the issue. Grace, I began, trying to stay calm, what you said last night about Logan has made me question our entire relationship. Do you really see me as your second choice? I expected her to immediately deny what she had said, to assure me that it was just a stupid comment made under the influence of alcohol. But her reaction was completely different from what I expected. Without saying a word, she got up from the table and locked herself in our room. I called her several times, asking her to come out and talk to me like adults, but I got no response. The rest of the day passed in uncomfortable silence. Grace only came out of the room to go to the bathroom or grab something from the kitchen, avoiding any eye contact with me. That night, I decided to sleep on the couch. Not because I wanted to punish her or anything like that, but because I felt we needed space to process what was happening. I hoped that the next day, with a clear head, we could have an honest conversation about what had happened. Maybe she was still hungover from what happened and would finally talk to me. But Sunday came, and the situation didn't improve. Grace continued with her silent treatment, refusing to talk to me beyond the bare minimum needed to coordinate the care of the kids, who came home that afternoon. Madison and Mason noticed something was wrong, but we tried to act normal around them. And here I am now, writing this on Sunday night, after another day of silence and tension. I can't understand why Grace is acting this way. She was the one who made the hurtful comment, and now she refuses to talk to me about it. I feel like I'm being punished for something I didn't do. Part of me wants to scream at her, demand an explanation, but I know that would only make things worse. Another part wants to pretend that nothing happened, to return to our normal routine and bury this incident. But I know I can't do that. This comment has opened a Pandora's box of insecurities and doubts that I can't simply ignore. Have I really been just a replacement all these years? Has our life together, our children, our shared dreams, all been just a plan B for her? And if Logan had given up drugs, would Grace have run back into his arms? I know that 16 years of marriage can't be summed up in a single comment made under the influence of alcohol. I know that we've built a life together, that we have 2 children together. But I can't help but feel that something fundamental in our relationship has broken. I need to know if I'm overreacting. Should I give Grace more time to process what happened? Should I insist on having a conversation, even if she doesn't want to? Or should I start considering that maybe our relationship isn't as solid as I always believed? Reddit, I need your honest opinion. Am I the bad guy for feeling this way? Am I making a mountain out of a molehill? Or am I right to be worried about the future of my marriage? Update 1. It's been almost 5 days since my original post, and I wanted to give you an update on my situation. First, I want to thank those who have taken the time to respond to my post. It's been a tough week, but your comments have helped me process my emotions and think about the next steps. Before getting into the details of what has happened this week, I want to address some of the most common questions and comments I've received. Many of you asked about the nature of the relationship between Grace and Logan, and how exactly it ended. After much reflection, I realized that I didn't know as many details as I thought. Grace and Logan were together for 4 years, from sophomore year in high school until sophomore year in college. From what Grace told me, their relationship was pretty intense, as teenage relationships often are. Logan's drug problem started during their last year together. At first, according to Grace, it was just recreational, but it gradually escalated to harder drugs. Grace tried to help him for months, even accompanied him to some meetings, but the situation became unsustainable when Logan started missing classes and jeopardizing his academic future. The breakup, according to what Grace had told me, was painful but necessary. She gave him an ultimatum, either the drugs or her. Logan chose the drugs. Grace was devastated but decided to focus on her studies. It wasn't so much a question as it was her telling him that either he stopped using or she would leave him, and that's what happened when she went to his dorm one night and noticed he was under the influence. I knew Grace from college, we were friends but not close. We started spending more time together about 6 months after her breakup with Logan, and we officially started dating almost a year later. I always thought that time had been enough for Grace to get over her previous relationship, but now I wonder if that was really the case. Several commenters suggested I should get a DNA test for my kids. I want to be clear, I don't believe there was any cheating on Grace's part, at least not during the time when Madison and Mason were born. Our relationship was solid then, and I didn't notice anything unusual in Grace's behavior. However, I understand that you can never be 100% sure of these things, so after much thought, I've decided that I'm going to get the tests done. Not because I really believe the kids aren't mine, but for peace of mind and to completely rule out that possibility. It's more of an exercise to calm my own insecurities than a true suspicion of infidelity. The first few days after my original post were tense. Grace continued with her silent treatment, and I felt increasingly frustrated and hurt. The kids definitely noticed something was wrong, though we tried to maintain a facade of normalcy in front of them. On Wednesday, Grace finally broke her silence. It wasn't a big conversation, but at least it was a start. She approached me while I was working on my laptop in the living room and simply said, "I'm sorry." I looked up, surprised, and asked, "What exactly are you sorry for?" Grace sat down on the couch, keeping some distance between us. "For what I said at the reunion. I shouldn't have said that. I was drunk and spoke without thinking." I wanted to press further, to ask her if she really meant what she said or if she just regretted saying it out loud, but I held back. Instead, I said, "I appreciate your apology, but I think we need to have a serious conversation about this." Grace nodded, but I could see the apprehension in her eyes. "I know," she said, "but I need a little more time to sort out my thoughts. Can we talk on Friday night? The kids will be at my parents' house, and we'll have privacy." I agreed to wait until Friday. Part of me wanted to resolve everything immediately, but it was better not to push if I wanted to get to the bottom of this. The rest of the week has been a strange mix of tension and normality. Grace and I have started talking again, but our conversations are superficial, limited to topics related to the kids or household tasks. We're sleeping in the same bed again, but the emotional distance between us is palpable. I've been trying to mentally prepare myself for our conversation tomorrow night. I have so many questions to ask Grace. One thing I've decided is that, regardless of how our conversation goes tomorrow, I'm going to suggest that we seek couples therapy. I think we need professional help to navigate this and rebuild trust in our relationship. I'm nervous about the conversation tomorrow, but also anxious to finally get some answers. Part of me fears what Grace might say, but another part feels relieved that we're finally going to address this head-on. Reddit, thank you again for all your support. I promise to give you another update after our conversation. If you have any advice on how to approach this conversation or specific questions I should ask, I would greatly appreciate it. That said, I don't have much time to read them, as I'll be working tomorrow and then we'll have the conversation. But I'll try to read the comments during work. Edit, some have asked about Logan and his current situation. As far as I know, he's still struggling with his addictions. Neither Grace nor I have had direct contact with him in years, but we occasionally hear news through mutual friends. The last time we heard about him, he was trying to get rehabilitated, but it seems he's had relapses. Edit 2, for those asking about my job and Grace's, we both have stable careers. I work in technology, and Grace is a high school teacher. Financially, we're fine, which is a relief considering everything else that's happening. Some have suggested that I should consult a lawyer, just to be prepared. I'm considering it, as I've considered many other options, though I hope it doesn't come to that. Update 2. It's been a few days since my last update, and as promised, I'm here to tell you what's happened. The conversation with Grace finally happened, but I regret to say that I'm not feeling any more at ease. In fact, I'm more worried than ever. On Friday night, after the kids went to Grace's parents' house, we sat down in the living room. The atmosphere was tense, neither of us really knew how to start. Finally, I decided to get straight to the point. Grace, I said, I need to understand what you meant by that comment about Logan. Do you really think you'd still be with him if he had chosen to stay with you? Grace took a deep breath before responding. Look, she began, Logan was my first love. That makes him special in a way that's hard to explain. But that doesn't mean what we have isn't real or important. I wasn't satisfied with that answer. But am I your second choice? I insisted. And this is where things got frustrating. Grace started giving evasive answers that only increased my doubts. For example, it's not about first or second choices. Every relationship is unique. The past is the past, what matters is our present together. Why are you so focused on something I said while I was drunk? Every time I tried to get a straight answer, she found a way to dodge the question. This only heightened my frustration and suspicions. At one point, Grace suggested that maybe we should consider couples therapy. Maybe a professional can help us communicate better, she said. While I appreciated the suggestion, in fact, I had been considering proposing it myself, I couldn't help but feel it was another way to avoid facing the problem directly. Finally, I decided to address the issue that had been on my mind since reading the comments on my original post. Grace, I said, trying to stay calm, I need to ask you something important. Are the kids mine? Grace's reaction was immediate and furious. How could you even ask that? She exclaimed. Of course, they're yours. How dare you doubt me like that? I tried to calm the situation. Look, I said, I'm not accusing you of anything. I just need to be sure. If the kids are mine, then you won't have a problem with me getting a DNA test, right? Grace's expression changed from anger to something I couldn't fully decipher. If you take that test, she said quietly, then we will have a problem, because it will mean you don't trust me at all. That response left me cold. Grace, I said, trying to keep my composure, it's hard to trust you when your answers haven't been very convincing so far. I need this to be sure. Every minute I spend talking to you, I have more doubts, not fewer. Grace stood up from the couch, visibly upset. I can't believe that after 14 years together, after everything we've shared, you're willing to throw it all away over a stupid comment I made while drunk, she said. If you can't trust me, then I don't know what we're doing here. With that, she went to the bedroom and slammed the door. That was a few hours ago. I've been sitting here on the couch ever since, trying to process everything that's happened. Reddit, I'm more confused than ever. Grace's refusal to give me direct answers and her reaction to the idea of a DNA test have only increased my suspicions. Part of me wants to believe her, to think that this is all just a big misunderstanding. But another part can't ignore all the red flags. I've made a decision. Next week, I'm going to get the DNA tests done. I know this could be the end of my marriage if Grace finds out, but I need to know the truth. With each passing hour, I feel more uneasy about this whole situation. I'm also seriously considering seeking legal advice. I don't want to think that my marriage might end, but given how things have unfolded, I feel like I need to be prepared for any eventuality. As for the kids, Madison and Mason, my heart breaks at the thought of how this might affect them. They're my world, and the idea that they might not be mine biologically is devastating. But at the same time, I know I'll love them no matter what. I just hope that, whatever happens, we can protect them as much as possible from this mess. I'll be back with another update when I have the test results or if something significant happens. For now, I guess it's another night on the couch. That's another thing that worries me about Grace, we can't have a decent conversation because she reacts like a teenager. Edit. Some have asked if I've considered that maybe Grace is acting defensively because she feels guilty about the comment, not necessarily because she's hiding something about the kid's paternity. It's a possibility I've considered, but her reaction to the idea of the DNA test seems too extreme if that were the case. For now, I'm giving her the benefit of the doubt, innocent until proven guilty. But with her reactions, it's hard to be on her side at the moment. I think a jury would see it as something very suspicious. Edit 2. For those suggesting that I should talk to Logan directly, I appreciate the suggestion, but I don't think it's a good idea right now. We haven't had contact in years, and given his ongoing struggle with addiction, I'm not sure he would be a reliable source of information. Plus, I don't want to risk Grace finding out that I've been talking to him behind her back. Update 3. It hasn't been many days since my last update, so unfortunately, I don't have the DNA test results yet. This is eating away at me because I wish I had the results right now to relieve the feeling that something might be wrong. But, anyway, I've already done the tests and now I just have to wait. I've been told it will take 2 to 3 weeks. However, this update is to discuss some thoughts I've been having, such as the idea of divorcing Grace. It's not just because she might have cheated on me with Logan or because my children might not be mine, which in itself would be a good reason for divorce, but also because of her strange behavior over these past days. Every time I try to talk to her about something that worries me, she shuts down both emotionally and physically. She always tries to play the victim, even though her comments and actions leave much to be desired. I understand that she might feel offended by my suggestion that she could have been unfaithful or that the children might not be mine, but her actions make me think that could be the case. And instead of sitting down and discussing it with me, she acts like a petulant child who just hopes I'll forget the problems and will return to normal. It's impossible to have a good marriage this way, without being able to talk things out and have an adult conversation. That's why I'm considering this path, regardless of whether she has been unfaithful or not, as that has not yet been proven. Update 4. A lot has happened in the past 3 weeks, and I want to summarize it in this update. First of all, many people in the comments have said that my wife's behavior is enough to consider divorce, especially because it makes everything seem even more suspicious. I've also talked to friends, and they believe that even if she might not be hiding anything, her reactions are not those of a mature person. Given what has happened recently, I think divorce may be the only path forward. Anyway, I haven't been able to prove her infidelity because, fortunately, the DNA test results have come back, and I am the father of Madison and Mason. This has lifted a huge weight off my shoulders, as it feels good to know that I haven't been raising someone else's children. At least all the anxiety and nervousness of the past few weeks have disappeared, at least concerning my children. It feels really good to say they are my kids. Before the results arrived, my relationship with Grace has been similar to what has happened in the last few weeks. She isolates herself in her room and barely speaks to me, only enough to maintain some normalcy in front of our children. Gradually, she begins to talk to me again until I suggest we have a conversation, and then she shuts down again when I mention something she minimally dislikes. I've tried every possible way to talk to her, but it's always the same, especially with our last conversation, where everything got out of control, and I believe there's no turning back in the marriage. Earlier today, when I finally had the test results and she was a bit calmer, I sat down to talk with her. I had already taken my children to my parents' house, who know, in broad terms, what's going on. When she came home from work, she asked where our children were, and I told her I had left them with my father so we could talk. I also told her I wasn't going to accept her shutting herself in her room again, because I was considering divorce if we didn't get to the bottom of this situation. I could see she was about to get up to go back to her room, but she stayed when I started taking the papers out of the envelope with the results. She asked what those were, and I told her they were the DNA test results. To say she was furious is an understatement, she was truly angry. She started yelling at me that I couldn't do this and that I was less of a man if I doubted her as a woman. She even took one of the decorations from the coffee table and threw it against the wall. Despite the whole spectacle, the strange thing was that she didn't run to her room. It was as if she was waiting to see what the results were. Finally, when she calmed down, I told her the result, and I couldn't tell if her expression was one of relief or not, as she was still very angry. Then she asked if I was happy with what I had done, doubting my wife. I replied that no, I would have preferred to talk things out, but in the past few weeks, she has been impossible to deal with, and I had no other choice but this. She then said that now that we had put this nonsense behind us, it was time for me to behave like a decent person and for us to finally return to how we were before. I replied that the test only resolved one of the many issues we had, and that didn't change her behavior. That's when she got angry again and started yelling at me. I feel I did the right thing by getting the kids out of the house because it's something I don't want them to have seen. She told me that if I wanted to divorce her, that was fine, that anyway I wasn't a real man because I couldn't handle a comment. Which is ironic, because she can't even handle having an adult conversation. If she's not hiding to avoid talking things out, she becomes aggressive and violent. She then said something else, that she wished her ex had chosen her instead of the drugs, because then she wouldn't have ended up with a loser like me. That made me angry, so I responded that this was a common pattern with her exes, because her previous partner didn't choose her either, but rather something that, compared to her, is much better, and now her future ex was also going to choose divorce instead of her. After that, I packed some things and came to live with my parents, from where I'm writing all this. My children have asked me what happened, but I told them I would explain tomorrow because I'm not in the right state to do so right now. Only my parents know, and they believe I shouldn't let my children live with her due to her displays of violence, but that's how things stand at the moment. After this, I believe divorce is no longer in question, it's necessary. I'll update again if anything changes in my situation after all this. Update 5. It's been a very long few months, but at least the divorce is finalized and I have full custody of my children. I wouldn't say it was easy to get sole custody, but at least something good came out of all this because I wouldn't have felt comfortable with my ex-wife taking care of my kids unsupervised. Not only because of how violent she became recently, with other similar episodes to the last update, but also because she has started drinking more than she should. I wouldn't call her an alcoholic, but in many of those episodes, it was clear she had been drinking. This helped with the divorce and made things a bit easier, but not enough to make these months anything but very difficult. It's good to start moving past all that, and considering that my children are no longer little and will soon be adults, I only have a few more years of dealing with my ex.